One day, two Canadian woodsmen decided that they were going to have a chopping tree competition. They went to different parts of the forest where they couldn't see each other but only could hear each other, and they each had an adjudicator with them to make sure, hey, no funny shenanigans were going on. They had 5 hours to cut as many trees as possible. So they started chopping. Now the first woodsman could hear that the second woodsman every hour would stop for 5 minutes. He started laughing and thought, you know what, I've got this in the bag. And he carried on chopping. And every hour when he heard that 5 minutes of silence, he knew that he was cutting down more trees. At the end of the 5 hours, they stopped and the adjudicators counted how many trees they'd cut down. The first woodsman said, hey, I got this in the bag. But when they counted the trees, they found out that the second woodsman had cut down more trees. The first woodsman was absolutely gobsmacked. How did he do that? So when he came across the second woodsman, he said, I don't understand. I was cutting those 5 hours and I didn't stop, and you were stopped at least 5 times. What were you doing? Resting? You would have thought he was resting. But the second woodsman said, well, obviously I was resting that 5 seconds, but I was 5 minutes, but I was also sharpening my axe. So, what's your interpretation of that story? There's many, as I said before. Neither one is right or wrong. My interpretation of that story, and I remember I told it to a young mentee that I had, when he was telling me that his friend was just so overwhelmed with all this work that he had to do, and he wasn't spending any time with his friends or just stopping to really look at what he was doing. He was just ploughing through. And so I told that story about why is it important to sometimes stop and sharpen the axe, because in the long run, you'll actually get more done. And that's one thing, I've got a couple of things that I want to share with you. 3 tips that sometimes you need to stop in the short term to have more productivity in the long term. So start looking at your life. Are you just running through the mill day by day, doing the same things, and you're not actually lifting your head up to say, okay, 1, how can I work smarter? What can I do that will help me sharpen my axe so that in the long run, with less effort, I'll be able to achieve, if not the same results, the better results. So firstly, start being smart with your work. Second, take time out. It's amazing how many people don't sit down to just breathe and start looking at what's before them. And thirdly, I say get some advice, especially from people who've been there, done it, seen it, got the t-shirt, because they say madness is doing the same thing and expecting to get the same results. The mind that got you into the problem is not the mindset that gets you out of the problem. So you either have to seek knowledge from somebody else or read up on some books and get knowledge from other people. So are you going to be like the woodsman 1, who just keeps on ploughing through and doesn't lift his head up to look at what he's doing? Or are you going to be the second woodsman, who was working smart and was sharpening his axe at intervals? As always, the choice is always yours. My name's Elaine Powell. I'm your mindset development coach, helping you to become unstoppable in your life and business.